track systems. They are the latest fad, but what is all the fuss about? Why is everyone talking about them? What are they, and how can they help our horses? And are they just a passing phase? Well, no, absolutely no, they're not just a passing phase. In fact, track systems are becoming so popular for keeping our horses healthy and sound, and of course, barefoot, that they are starting to pop up everywhere, all over the world. In essence, a simple track system can be put up around the perimeter of a field so that your horses live on that track 24/7, moving constantly and eating predominantly hay, not grass. But aren't horses meant to eat grass, Lindsay? No, not our lowland, low-fibre, high-sugar grasses like you find in most horse paddocks. And there's a good reason we sometimes refer to these grass horse paddocks as founder traps. Track systems have gained in popularity as a way of horses living in a more species-specific manner, providing lots and lots of natural movement, which is essential for herd interaction and a constant throughput of, obviously, essential fibre, i.e. hay, not sugary grass. And track systems can be very simple and they can work just fine, or they can be more elaborate with all weather surfaces and over different types of terrain. And if created and run properly, they are one of the most efficient and safe ways of keeping our equines in our modern world today. So much so that we have now got commercial track liveries and rehab centres popping up all over the place. But how much do you know about track systems, and what's the real nitty-gritty of why they are so good for our horses? And what if you can't keep your horses on a track? You don't have your own place, or the yard owner won't let you track? Well, stick around and let's discuss track systems. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lindsay Setchell. I'm the editor of the Barefoot Horse magazine. I'm also a presenter on Barefoot Live, and I started up the organisation Hoofing Marvellous, and I've been into barefoot horses for years, absolutely years and years and years. And we also put on workshops, but that's in another video. And our mission on this YouTube channel is to rid the world of unnecessary lameness, to get our horses sound and healthy, and in the process to do away with metal shoes which they don't need, which can cause, of course, their own problems, in another video. I'd love for you to stick around. I'd like you to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell, and please, please help me make the world a better place for our equines and support me on this channel. Are you with me? Then let's get into it. Where have you been all your life if you've not heard about track systems? It really is that buzz that's been steadily building for the last few years. There are groups on social media you can join to find out more about tracking. There are examples of tracks all over channels like YouTube. They've been written about in magazines like the Barefoot Horse magazine and even in mainstream mags, which is amazing. And then there are even commercial livery yards now, which are completely revamping the way we keep our horses on a commercial scale on tracks. You may even have heard of a friend tracking their horse, or you might even be tracking your horses or setting up a track right now. They are quite literally everywhere, and for a very, very good reason. In a previous video, I talked about the epidemic of hoof-related problems that are blighting our domestic horses throughout this world. In a study in the Netherlands, they found a whopping 85% of horses with hoof-related problems. And if you want to watch that video, it's called Equine Hoof-Related Problems, an Epidemic, and you can go and look for it about here, I think. But it's really serious issue of hoof-related problems just blighting our domestic horses all over the place. So track systems are rising in popularity because so many horses are now suffering from lameness issues. You know it, you see it everywhere. The majority of them are linked to traditional diet and management practices, and of course, laminitis, which is a really big one, which the majority of hoof-related issues stem from. But that's for another video. More videos, please, Lindsay. Owners have heard the buzz about tracking horses, and they are giving it a go all over the world. When I first started teaching horse and hoof care many, many years ago, I used to have people come into my house to see my track system that I had set up for my barefoot horses. I didn't know anyone else that was tracking really their horses back then at all. I used to teach them about it, and then we'd go around my track and we'd have a little walk around and they'd see how I'd set it up and why. And they got so popular with my clients back then that we used to have little track parties at the weekends where one of my clients would host a track do, and we'd all go and have nibbles and drinks. Soft drinks, of course. And then we'd all have a walk around their track and have a good chat about it, much to the disdain of the horses, no doubt. It was the start, particularly in the UK, little did we know, of something that would begin to take the equine world by storm. The rise and rise of the track systems, but not everyone can track. So what do you do? Well, stick around to the end of this video if you can't track, because we'll talk more about that. But what essentially is a track system? Well, in its purest form, it's a track that's set up around the perimeter of your field. And you can track 24/7, 365, putting piles of hay around to encourage more species-specific eating and movement. But why is this beneficial? Well, it's beneficial for the horse's physical, mental, and emotional well-being, with horses living on tracks being renowned for being more settled, more exercised, a better weight, easier to handle, have less emotional stress, and of course less emotional stress for you, the owner, especially when it comes to trying to limit their horse's grass intake. So probably the biggest worry when running a track is, how do I source the best mixed species low sugar hay for my horse? How do I get good hay, Lindsay? Well, times are changing and hay suppliers are beginning to realise that horse owners are shifting back to feeding our horses like horses and not like cows. We don't want to fatten them up. We certainly don't want to drink their milk. And, well, we don't want to eat them, do we? Well, not in the UK anyway, but I'm in France. But getting the right hay to feed your horses 24/7 can be tricky. Hay suppliers will only change, though, if you demand change. And guess what? That is really beginning to happen now. If owners become more proficient at identifying grasses which are no good for our horses in excess, such as ryegrass, then they can begin to recognise those no good grasses in their hay and start demanding hay with more native grass species, because that's what's important. So let's dig into hay, haylage and grass species, etc. in another video. Stay tuned, folks. If your horse is suffering from being footsore or has been diagnosed with laminitis or Cushing's or navicular or hoof abscesses and so many more hoof and body related problems, then one of the safest ways you can keep your horse and get them better is by putting them on a track. And before you start saying, but Lindsay, aren't horses restricted from moving and running and having fun on tracks? And aren't they going to get sad that they can't eat the grass that they can see growing up in the middle? And my horse can't eat hay all day. It will literally blow up. Well, just stop for a minute and look at how the horse has evolved to live in an environment way physically tougher than the ones our domestic horses live on. In the wild, horses travel in excess of 25 miles a day, and they have to do this because they don't have grass in plentiful supply within a distance of a couple of acres like our domestic horses do. They travel in herds because they are prey animals, right? And there is definitely safety in numbers. So they walk along very well-defined paths where they can fan out periodically to forage for their food, moving and eating and moving on again to find even more grass and forage to eat. And they have water sources that they must travel to take their fill of water, probably just once a day or once every couple of days. They sleep where they want to sleep and not where we think they should sleep, i.e. in a stable. And their hooves, because of all this movement and eating the right kind of fibrous forage, well, they are what we now term utterly rock crunching. They are shaped and honed due to this quite tough behaviour-driven wear. In other words, all of what I've said on the way that they live creates beautiful sound, healthy hard hooves and balanced bodies. And before people shout, but my horse has had his feet bred off him, or the genetics are 75% more important than diet and management, Lindsay, then I would have to say that that's just not true. Because diet trumps genetics every single time. No horse, none, are born with hooves that are naturally weak. The weakness begins from the moment they enter into this world and we, the humans, start keeping and feeding them incorrectly. And then the hoof and body problems begin. In my entire career, I've never come across a horse, not ever, that's not able to grow healthier, sounder hooves if given the right diet and management. And there are an awful lot of horses out there with hoof-related problems, hence why shoeing is believed to be a solution. But shoes cause their own problems on an already compromised hoof. But more of that in another video. What they are doing is helping our domestic horses live in a more species-specific manner. Okay, in company, moving around constantly, searching for high fibre, going along those well-defined paths, having a single watering station, and hopefully some natural hedgerows to browse on too. That's all happening on the tracks. And all of this will help your horse heal from hoof pathologies. It'll heal from stress. It'll heal from ulcers. And a side note, folks, horses are horrors in disguise at the moment in the equine world. There are so many horses with them and they are rising, and horse owners don't even know they exist. So we will definitely be talking about ulcers in another video. Back to tracks. They are ultimately the solution for that lovely phrase, environment enrichment. And it's that zoos have been trying to do now for years, in fact, and they're trying to keep their animals in a more species-specific surroundings. They're trying to keep them and feed them what they should be eating, not what the mainstream animal feed manufacturers put in a bag and tell you to feed your horses. Yes, you got it. Another video. Stay tuned. So tracks sound wonderful. They are easy to put up. You don't have to have a lot of land to put them up. No more, acres and acres and acres of horses for land. That was only really relevant to do with the grass eating. Horses get far more movement on tracks fenced around the perimeter of an acre or more, believe it or not, than they would do just moving around a small paddock with their heads down, munching grass all day. And the more movement means more awesome feet and awesome bodies. And you can use basic electric fencing, and there is really a big but here, the fencing needs to be properly earthed. It needs to have an extra strand down there at the bottom of the fence to stop the horse reaching underneath to try and reach the nibbles of grass. Otherwise, you'll still continue to have problems. And that strand must not be touching any bit of material. Otherwise, it just won't work properly. And believe me when I tell you, horses and ponies won't stand there all day mooning over the grass in the middle, and they won't care as long as they have constant 24/7 hay, which means fibre, of course, which means satisfied feelings of fullness and a very happy gut microbiome, and that's not being starved every 5 minutes or having its food chopping and changing all the time. And another big misconception is that your horse will get fat feeding him on her or her 24/7 hay, because you know it, right? It's already overweight, and if you feed constantly, then it's just going to get fatter, won't it? No. Initially, when your horse or pony has access to that hay 24/7, they may think they have gone to heaven, so they will eat themselves silly. But after a couple of weeks, they will realise that this hay is actually not ever going to run out, and then they'll stop gorging. And they do, believe me, they will stop gorging. They do stop. They do. And thinner horses end up eating what they need and becoming the weight they need to be, which, folks, I hate to break it to you, but some horses like being quite trim. But we do have an obesity epidemic in this equine world, and track systems address this problem perfectly. In an article in one of our back issues 10, a lady called Dr. Lindsay wrote about two rescue ponies that she had taken on, Tilly and Billy. And when Tilly and Billy turned up, both of them had already been suffering from laminitis. Billy had significant stretch in his white line and he was very overweight. But Lindsay had been on our track parties. And so she decided to go against everything she knew previously and never restricting the hay, and shock horror, she never even weighed it either. She knew the importance of the gut microbiome. She's an experienced microbiologist. And she knew the gut needed that constant throughput of hay to work properly. And she knew how to source the right kind of hay too, that mixed meadow native species, not high in sugar, not high yield grasses such as ryegrasses. So Lindsay recorded Billy's weight over 8 months on track, that's 32 weeks, and found that at the start he weighed 313 kilos, and after 32 weeks of walking around on track all day, he was, with hay in plentiful supply and having to go foraging for it, he ended up losing a whopping 62 kilos. And Lindsay talks about this in her article about creating the track for the first time and how it was a steep learning curve for her. And she said, I have kept horses on and off for nearly 40 years and have always done so on the ubiquitous grass paddock and stable setup. And then she said about the tracks, this system seemed to make so much sense, and I knew straight away that this was the environment that Billy and Tilly needed. Billy to lose weight and to regain strong feet, and Tilly to maintain a healthy weight and prevent further episodes of laminitis. Please do get issue 10 and read that article. It is quite great. And it's not just Lindsay who has found tracking the safer option. In our latest issue 33, Alison and Maddie Sharp tell us about their commercial track livery called PB Barefoot Rehab and Retirement Livery, located in Staffordshire in the UK. And their mantra is to put natural boarding and rehab as their total priority. We put up a post about them on our Facebook page, and these were some of the responses that we got. Morgan said, track systems stimulate more movement than just an open rectangular paddock. One horse owner put tracking devices on the horses and found in a regular paddock pasture, the horses travelled around 3 miles a day. When put into a track system, they moved 15 to 18 miles a day. That is a very significant difference, and we've seen it documented as well. Francis said, a track system is actually the perfect system to keep horses on small lots and still give them plenty of space to move around. There are so many examples of tiny tracks. Here in the Netherlands, many of us don't have much space, and I've seen perfect little tracks on less than half an acre. One of my previous places was 2,500 metres squared and had plenty of space for my 2 girls, and even when I had 4 on it for a few months, that was perfectly fine. An acre is actually quite spacious for Dutch standards. And on another track post on our mag page, advertising our track show on Barefoot Live that we did last year, you must go and check that out. Stacey said, mine have been on track for a year. I like the exercise for me and putting the hay out. Well, there's another benefit of tracking, right? And tracks are popping up all over the place, like Lawrence's track in France. Lawrence said, my first horse track system livery in the French Alps in Chamonix, Mont Blanc. And Mia in Norway said, even in wet, cold, muddy countries like Norway, this system works. Love how I can just leave the barn and the horses can just continue to be horses. So you can see how exciting it is to be in the equine world right now with all these far more natural and species-specific ways of keeping our horses. And you don't have to own masses of land in order to put up a track. In fact, Dr. Lindsay Glue put up her small track at the top of her garden, and it was definitely less than an acre for Billy and Tilly, but their movement was going around it all day, and it meant more movement. But what about if you can't track? What about if you have no land, or your livery yard owner isn't willing to let you put up a track, and you can still go successfully barefoot? Well, of course you can, yeah. Because a track is a perfect way to mimic the natural behaviour and lifestyle of the equine species in the domestic world, but that still doesn't mean that you can't go barefoot. No, not at all. You can still really do positive things to help keep your horses as safe as possible, like feeding good hay, sourcing that mixed meadow native grass hay and feeding that 24/7 if you can. If you can't feed it 24/7 because your yard owner won't let you, then make sure your horse never runs out of it. For instance, if you have to stable for any length of time, literally never run out. Put the hay in piles and nets around the stable. Don't just give it one big hay net, which they will have eaten by the time you get home, and spend the rest of their hours having no fibre throughput going, through their guts. Remember that video coming up on ulcers? That's one of the reasons why you can also help your horse by stop feeding a multitude of bagged feeds and supplements, and especially if your horse isn't out moving 24/7, because that is just what I call hypernutrition going over the top with supplements because you're in fear of your horse missing out on some nutrients. And if you're in a scenario where your horse has hoof problems and you really are stuck with that lack of turnout, you can't get the right hay, you have to feed the yard high sugar haylage, possibly putting your horse out on retired cow pasture full of the wrong grasses, then the hard truth is, folks, perhaps it's time to go and look for somewhere else. And if you can't find anywhere else, then I have a top tip. Put the money you were spending on your livery fees and go buy a small plot of land yourself for your horses to live on. You don't need much to set up a small track system. I hope you've liked this video on tracks. I hope it helped you understand how powerful tracks can be when keeping horses, and that they really are the optimum way to go to keeping horses safe and hoof problem free. I hope you learned something new. Let me know in the comments below. Let me know. Let's get that much needed dialogue going. Talk to me, talk to my team, and we can help you work through the conflicting and confusing mire that is the equine world. There are loads of other ways that you can find out more about the tracks. We have published lots and lots of articles over the years on tracks in the BHM. So if you grab yourself a subscription on the MAG website to a digital one or a digital imprint, because then you can access with that digital access all the back issues and you can go reading all about tracks. You can join Barefoot Live because we've got a great show on tracks that we did. I think we did a couple of shows where we interviewed commercial track owners all about their tracks, how they set them up, how they use them, how they did it, the costs involved, how it helps the horses rehab, and so much more about track systems, everything about track systems. So to join Barefoot Live, go to the MAG website. And of course, we have our workshops in the UK and Ireland at the moment, I'm sorry about that, where we talk about tracks and more species-specific ways of keeping your horses. And coming soon, as I've said before, our online training for owners and those who want to become pro trimmers. And that's all coming soon. So you have to stay tuned to this channel for more information. But what can you do right now? Well, you can share this video on your Instagram or your Facebook story. You can take a still of this video, and you can we in the magazine or me will repost it. And don't forget the reason that we're here is so for you to subscribe, so that you can keep me talking about all this stuff. I'm inclined to make more videos if you please subscribe. Let's make this world a better place for our equines. Let's rid it of unnecessary lameness, because we can. And oh, don't forget, join me in my mailing list. Join me on my mailing list and become an email subscriber so that I can send you a little video every single week. And don't forget to check out my other videos on the channel here and here. And my next video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about how horses can successfully compete in high-level competitions barefoot. How are they doing that? So that's all in my next video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for sticking around to the end of this video. So excited you're here. And I hope this channel helps you get the barefoot success you deserve to find with your horse. And I can't wait to hear all about it and how this video has helped you, because that's what we're here for. Thanks so much, and see you again in the next video. Bye-bye, bye-bye, barefooters, and bye-bye, everyone who wants to go barefoot. Bye-bye.